Thank you, James, for joining me for a virtual coffee with the editor. We've been in lockdown for a while now, and I just wanted to touch base with you in terms of Traxtion. How's the business coping with the not so business as usual environment?
Philippa, I think we're doing okay. It's an unprecedented time, and I think we all recognise that. So we've adopted a sort of structured and phased approach as to how we deal with this. And our first objective was to keep our people safe. For a long time now, we've been doing processes, procedures, etc., that we can put in place in order to ensure that our people that are continuing to work are safe. And now, of course, our next objective is to ensure that the people that are coming back are going to be working in a sustainably safe way. I think we all understand that the economy has to restart, but I think also all understand that this virus is going to be with us for some time. So the question is, we restart. So that's something that I think we're very advanced on. We've got all the inductions ready and everything for the people returning. But about 70 or 80% of our projects are still active, or sites are still active. And that's obviously because rail has been deemed an essential service, and a number of our customers have been deemed essential services, and we continue to run for them. And obviously all of our border sites continue to run. So from that perspective, it's obviously positive for us. Nobody likes to lose a big chunk of revenue, which is what obviously has happened on the sites that have declared force majeure on us. And then obviously our Roslin site is one of our biggest sites, and that has been impacted by this. So the nice thing about rail operations is that it's quite easy to put social distancing in place, and rail also represents a great opportunity, I think, to regional governments and the South African government to keep the economy turning, because each one of our trains, for example, in Zambia and Tanzania, represent 72 trucks. So would you rather have one train with a crew of 2 or 3 people crossing the border, or would you rather have 72 trucks? And I think there's a simple answer to that. Similarly in South Africa, so rail represents a great opportunity to keep the economies moving, and that has so far been recognized, which is really positive. What's uncertain, of course, is how deep the ensuing financial crisis is going to be that follows on from the health crisis, and that's a great unknown. And I think there's a very simple answer to what we've implemented as a company, and I think what most companies have to do is to take the difficult decisions very early on, protect the core, and ensure the core, which is the heart of your company, remains healthy and safe, so that you can ride out the storm. And when you don't know how bad the storm's going to be, you have to protect yourself and keep reserves in order to ensure the longevity of the company throughout whatever's coming.
Because there has been like really mixed kind of thoughts coming through in terms of some saying, well, the flu kills more people, we don't lock down for the flu, and then this. But I suppose we just don't have enough information at hand to really take calculated decisions. So we're looking at this from a worst case scenario and the broader impact that it's going to have.
Yeah, look, I think you can see the countries that have taken that sort of a view have really taken a massive smack from the virus. So I do think that everything that the government has done so far has been pretty well informed. You look at Italy and Spain that didn't take it seriously initially. You look at the United States that didn't take it seriously initially, and to a lesser extent the United Kingdom. But they have taken huge smacks from this. And unfortunately in South Africa we don't have the benefit of a health system with the kind of capacities that those health systems do, or a huge spike in people requiring ICU help. So and it is incredible when you think about the extent to which the South African government and private sector are rallying together, and you look at the Solidarity Fund, the amount of money that's been donated, the South African ventilator projects and everything that are going on. And incidentally, we are providing our safety processes and procedures around keeping our people safe to the South African ventilator project, which is very cool. So that's great. Our safety and compliance department are assisting them, which is awesome. But when you see how South Africa is pulling together, I do think that this has been a necessary period in order to prepare for the future, which is a lot more infections, so that we're able to cope with it then. And the planning for the South African government is that the peak is in September, which is a long time from now. So I think that we have to prepare to get ready to live with this for an extended period of time. And then the question is, how does that look? Because the economy has to come back. We have to get back to work, and our people have to be safe while they're working. And in rail operations, it's really relatively easy, but in workshop environments, it's a lot more challenging. So all of our focus at the moment is ensuring that our workshops and our people that are working in the workshops are working in a sustainable and as safe as possible.
When are you planning on getting the workshop open again?
We actually do have an essential services certificate, so we do have a very low level of work that is ongoing. The problem is, if our suppliers aren't working and the wider rail community isn't working, and there's not a huge amount of work that we can actually do. So we've identified the work that we can do at this time, and we're doing that. So the broader industry has to come back to work. Rail has been deemed an essential service, and it comes back to the fact that rail is an outstanding way to keep the economy moving without moving a lot of people through trucks and exposing a lot of people to person-to-person contact. The capacity and the density is perfect for this time. So I do hope that that's taken into account. And certainly, it seems like a complete no-brainer to me that Transnet is brought back to full operation as fast as possible. It has a direct impact on our business, obviously, because we don't operate on the main lines in South Africa. But for the benefit of the broader economy, the Transnet needs to come back to work very, very quickly, I think.
As Traxtion as a private company, you've just spoken about your team being involved in the ventilator program. And I know that you and I have spoken about, the role that private companies such as yourself can play in the broader economy, especially with the calls by government for greater private business participation. What are your thoughts, especially now? I think this would be the ideal catalyst to really get things going.
Yeah, it just goes without saying, the draft white paper into national rail policy is there, it's sitting in front of Parliament. Now's the time to approve it and then really get our industry going. There are companies the rail support companies in South Africa that have been around for decades and decades have done really, truly extraordinary things. And those companies have either shut or are operating on skeleton staff. They've lost massive IP. The investments from external companies into South Africa are not happening. And that's because the procurement is just simply not happening across the rail industry. In the Railroad Association, we have meeting after meeting where members and companies are coming to us and literally saying they're on their knees. And that's not because of this crisis. That's because of the years that have predated this. It's really time for the structural change to come in the railway industry. Government has put out the legislation that will achieve that. And it really needs the impetus to implement it. And times like this are the perfect time to implement that and to stimulate growth and to stimulate investment back into the sector. I've said it time and again, and I do honestly, genuinely believe it, that it would ignite a boom in the rail industry to allow for the draft white paper and the opening up of access onto the core network into South Africa would precipitate a boom, and of course would be enormously benefit to Transnet itself, who as a railway owner would benefit from significant investment, and the government from significant investment through greater access fees.
So talking about the Railroad Association, I believe that you're involved?
Yes. Look, we do have an interim board in place, but at the moment I am the interim chairperson of the Railroad Association. We're busy putting a new memorandum of incorporation into place, and then we'll, as soon as possible, it's very difficult, obviously, in this stage, call another annual general meeting when a permanent board will be put in place.
Roslin has now been officially open, I think it was February, for a year now. Last week or the week before, we ran the article on your wheel shop, which has now been commissioned. Okay, it was before lockdown that we ran that. What is the next phase for that site?
Look, we've always looked at Roslin as a rail services hub, and as a company, we don't want to be all things to all people. So we work with a number of sector specialists, and I think we'll continue to do that. What we looked for at Roslin, we're about 90% of the way there now. We are looking at a couple of our more important subcontractors to see if there's scope for them to join us on the site. As you know, it's an enormous, a huge site with great potential for expansion. So we are looking at some of our more important subcontractors to see if there is scope for them to come and join us on the site, and then we can then enjoy the synergies of working together on that basis. So, at the moment we have the workshop complete. So we have all of the lines into the workshop complete. We have our parts distribution business really nicely up and running now. We have our parts refurbishment business really also nicely up and running. We've signed some nice contracts there as well with domestic regional customers. And then the wheel shop is the next element of the business that has now just come in. We really are very far advanced. It's amazing how quickly we are running out of space. We've already had to add a new extra storage capacity onto the site because we have run out of space very, very quickly. The big thing for me, again, if we come back to the opportunity that is available in South Africa, that to me is the huge thing in our industry at the moment. And the long-term drive is the draft white paper international policy, international rail policy. But that will take some time to implement. The vertical separation of infrastructure and operations is a difficult thing to implement. I think everybody recognizes that. But there is a short-term element to this too, which is entering into access agreements within the current regulatory framework and growing capacity on our domestic networks. I do think it presents a wonderful opportunity for all of the stakeholders in the industry, and it really is something that I do think is one of those quick wins that South Africa has available to it to ignite growth, and I do sincerely hope that it gains impetus. It does seem to be. I mean, the Minister of Finance mentioned it in his presentation of the annual budget. I do believe it's coming.
And there is quite a massive restructuring of the state-owned entities coming as well, in terms of what our president said the other day. So I think there will be some rather remarkable changes coming through. We might see this actually being implemented.
Yeah, I really believe it, especially when it's a win-win. When it's a win for Transnet, when it's a win for government, and then obviously when it leads to significant investment from the private sector into the industry. It is something that presents the most wonderful opportunity. But as we always say about this, it's not about the investment that we bring, because we are a catalyst for upstream investment. The investment that we bring is a tiny fraction of the investments that are potentially unlocked in the upstream economy, and it's so easy to lose sight of that. But I mean, ultimately, that's the story. That's the infrastructure as a catalyst for economic growth, and are that catalyst as infrastructure operators.
During this time, is there any advice that you would like to share with the industry?
I just sincerely hope that everybody is looking at ways of ensuring that we get back to work in a sustainable way. If companies go back to work and they don't implement social distancing, they don't have proper processes and procedures in place in order to ensure that their staff are safe at work, then I do think that all that's going to happen is we're going to go straight back into a lockdown scenario. Those companies that do act in that way will be the reason we do. So unless every company in the country really buys into the severity of the situation and really buys into ensuring that we go back to work in a sustainable way and that the social distancing protocols are put in place, then I think we're going to find ourselves back in this position in a couple of months' time, which will be absolutely devastating to the economy at that stage. And we simply can't afford it. So my only hope is that everybody is taking this as seriously as they should.